I pulled the song, and the reason I pulled the song is because the video so heavily featured my daughters, and the way people were distorting the image of my kids made me feel like,
right.
Oh, here's the heartbeat of the song was as a dad who loves his kids. And now, because the world is viewing the song in a way that it wasn't intended, they're not. Now I feel like as a dad, I put my kids in harm's way. So guess what happens? I pull the song, Wally, and guess who comes out of the word work to criticize me?
Oh,
Any guesses?
Everybody, the church.
There you go. The church saying, hey, you're a coward. You should have stood up for what you believed. And to that, I would just say, man, I'm here all day and every day to stand up for what I believe, but I'm also going to stand in the gap to protect my kids. And I felt like the right thing to do was to pull the video to protect my daughters.
Hottest is hottest. The latest fashion trend is a little.
All right. So a song you did with your girls in the video talking about dressing modestly. Who in their right mind could ever have a problem with that? And apparently people did, and they blew you up. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, I released that on Father's Day weekend. In fact, that you playing that little bit is the first time I've heard that since everything blew up. I released it on Father's Day weekend. I mean, Wally, you guys know I've come on your show for years, and part of what I do is like make up funny songs and satire. And I think a lot of times our genre can be pretty serious, and I feel like one of the ways God's gifted me is to hopefully bring some laughs to people during hard times, just like you guys do every day. So sometimes I do that with my songs. What?
Let me say this. No one does that better than you, honestly. You are the guy for that in this format. That's we always go to you for that kind of stuff. And so, I thought as a fellow dad, it's good. Reinstill some of these values in our daughters.
Yeah, it's
so
for
again,
dad.
I had the hardest time figuring out the controversy.
Well, it was really just a simple, silly song from a dad to his daughters, just encouraging them. And it's clearly a joke because I was encouraging them and trying to make them believe that the latest fashion trend is not the short shorts from Lululemon, but it's turtlenecks and slacks, which is clearly a joke. And if you knew my family, you would laugh because you're like, oh yeah, he's the dad who's always trying to keep his. It's like there was a country song back in the day where the dad is like telling his daughter's boyfriend, I'll see you when you get home. I'll just be sitting here cleaning my gun. Like, it's joking.
Rodney Atkins, one of my favorite songs.
And so, but you know what? It turns out a whole lot of people took issue to it, and the mob kind of came after me, and I'd never experienced anything like that. I've been singing about Jesus for my whole life, for 20 years. And this erupted in my face, and people started to really come after me in a pretty vile way. In short, Wally, I would say, I've spent many times on your show singing your hate mail, and let's just say the shoe could be on the other foot, and you could be singing my hate mail after releasing Modest is Hottest.
I would absolutely love to do that sometime, because I know, because I texted you and I was kind of laughing about it, and I texted you and you're like, I said, I heard you pulled the song, what's up? And you're like, it got violent towards like my family and stuff. And so explain who is mad, because I can't fathom that a group of like Christians or believers are like, hey, that's really horrible that you tell your daughter to dress modestly. So who was mad and why were they mad? I think people have to understand that, because it's mind-blowing.
Well, I had to do a lot of figuring out, to answer that question myself. And, in short, there was a period where it felt like everybody was mad. It literally felt like, okay, I successfully upset everybody. But I would say, for starters, just a huge group of people that would hate me just because I love Jesus took offense to that song. I also realized that I unknowingly stepped in. So whether I had written a song called Modest or Hottest or not, much of the criticism was coming from people who don't even listen to my music, who don't go to my shows. Right. They don't listen to Way FM. They're not believers. They're just upset that I'm a Christian, period. And then a Christian making a commentary on the topic of modesty made me kind of unknowingly, I was stepping into this already swirling storm of pop culture that hates anybody trying to tell anybody how they should live. Don't disrupt my truth. I have my truth, and it's to be protected at all times. And in short, what I began to realize, Wally, is we live in a world, and surely we've all realized this now, we preach tolerance at every turn, but we have a very hard time practicing tolerance. And so I will say there were a lot of people, a term that I've heard a lot is progressive Christianity. And even though I've been a Christian for a long time, I kind of stay out of some of the politics of the church because I'm a preacher's kid and I kind of got burned out on that stuff. But there's this term of progressive Christianity. And a lot of those folks were very upset at me. And they're in the process of deconstructing their faith as they knew it growing up in church. People who had a negative experience with what they call purity culture, which again is a new term I wasn't familiar with. A lot of people who feel like it was toxic to grow up in a church with their parents teaching them the path of purity. You may have remembered when I was a kid, I remember the topic of a promise ring where your parents would sit down and talk to you about the importance of, saving yourself for marriage and enjoying sex within the confines of marriage. And when you step outside of God's plan, that's when there's going to be consequences, like in any aspect of our lives, when we choose a way other than God's way. And people just really jumped on that, saying you're perpetuating this toxic purity culture. And they even took it further, Wally, and began to talk about rape culture and saying it was completely off base, completely missing the point. And basically you started to realize people were adding their narrative to the song. They were putting my song into a narrative that they already wanted. They wanted to prove a point, and my song in their minds helped them do it. And I just wound up being a casualty in the process.
Yeah, see, that's part of the problem. We substitute our truth for God's truth and stuff. And to be able to speak truth and love to your daughters and say, look, this is, a way that I think you're going to be happier if you choose to be modest, because here's the thing about it. This is what drove me crazy is people are like, don't tell these girls to be ashamed of their bodies. You're not doing that, but you get what you get back what you give out, in life with a lot of different things.
Absolutely. And any parent who's worth anything in the lives of their children is going to have some standards and boundaries that they're encouraging their children to. And given the chance, as long as I get this brief window to speak into the lives of my daughters, and if the Lord had given me sons, I would be speaking into their lives in much the same way. We get this brief window, Wally, to speak into their lives. And every chance I get, I'm going to encourage them to pursue the path of purity over the path of promiscuity, all the while teaching them that this will not be a house of shame. This will not be a house of disgrace. This will be a house of grace where we know, look, we all make mistakes, right? And so I think a lot of people jumped into, they said, why don't you write a song for the boys? Well, the Lord didn't give me boys. He gave me girls, and the criticisms ran amok. And it was just one of those things where, look, you don't know me as a parent. That's what I wanted to say. They're saying, well, you're teaching your daughters that it's all about that they're responsible for the way that boys and men think and that it's all about their bodies. And I'm actually in my home teaching them the exact opposite, Wally. I'm teaching them that they don't have to flaunt their bodies half naked on TikTok in order to find love and affection. That's not the kind of love and affection they need. I'm teaching them that they are a brain, that they are a heart, that they are a living, breathing, amazing human being capable of doing great things in this world because God put them on this earth for a reason. I'm teaching them that they are more than their appearance, but people took the song to mean, no, you're actually telling them that they're nothing but their appearance. And to that, I have to respectfully disagree.
See, you're telling one side of the story. You can't always tell every part of every story. You're telling one side of the story. This is my experience, and this is what I think women and girls should do. You were never saying, well, guys have a blank slate and a clean pass, and they should think and do whatever they want to do. That was never the intent behind the song. Because if you have sons, your job as a parent is to raise them in the way of God as well, and to give them morals and to respect women. And so that's on them. But the two worlds do intersect. I mean, I always love when women will go out and be like really scantily clad, and then they get really offended by somebody saying something to them who likes the way they look or is attracted, or a guy is kind of a pig about it, and you're like, well, you are. You're putting that out there, and you're getting you want a reaction. That's what we do in life. We dress certain ways. We want reactions, and you got a reaction you didn't like, but you put it out there for consumption, and that's what you got. If you had done it differently, you probably wouldn't have gotten that reaction. Now, is that guy still a pig and shouldn't do that? Absolutely.
Right,
But
right.
you can't be bothered by the reaction you get if you are going down this road.
Yeah, I think it's for me as a dad, I would be making a grave mistake if I didn't prepare my daughters for the way I, as a male, know that most males' minds can work. Right? I mean,
Right.
look,
We know how it
we are
goes.
kidding. We're kidding ourselves, Wally. And we would be, not to steal a line from another one of my songs, but we would be doing the opposite of letting the truth be told if we weren't honest about the way men's minds work, the way, and also, not to, but look, let's just call it what it is. We know for a fact that there are some pretty sick people on this earth and
Right.
on social media who are baiting and looking for young females videos. I mean, we see we have to guard our daughters' social media accounts left and right because there are people trying to, there's some sick people with dark motivations when it comes to what they're viewing on social media. And so, it's my job as a dog. And the thing is, though, Wally, the world doesn't like words like modesty. The world doesn't like words like purity. And the reason is because those all point towards restraint. And nobody likes to be told how they should live their lives. That's why being a Christian is not popular, because everything about Christianity is about laying down your own truth and choosing to believe that there's a greater truth that's going to lead you to a more fulfilling life. And that's the issue for years and years and years. People have had an issue with Christianity. They said, don't tell me how to live my life. And when you open up the Bible and you begin to realize that God is giving each of us an instruction manual for how to live our lives. And when we step into his plan, we won't be handcuffed by the restraints. We will find true freedom and life to the fullest, like John 10:10 says. And so, it's crazy because you're catching me at the right time to talk about this. And I'm glad you reached out, because for several weeks I stayed very quiet. And wanted to do that because I wanted to be slow to speak. I wanted to be quick to listen. I wanted to be slow to become angry. Those are all good things that the Bible encourages us to do. But as the weeks have progressed,
Boy, to
Wally,
be you someday would be great, because I don't have any of those skills.
well, neither do I. But when social media comes at you big time, and when you feel like your family's under attack, and in short, the hard part is I can speak with confidence about it now, because I pulled the song. And the reason I pulled the song is because the video so heavily featured my daughters, and the way people were distorting the image of my kids made me feel like,
right.
Oh, here's the heartbeat of the song was as a dad who loves his kids. And now, because the world is viewing the song in a way that it wasn't intended, now I feel like as a dad, I put my kids in harm's way. So guess what happens? I pull the song, Wally, and guess who comes out of the word work to criticize me?
Oh,
Any guesses?
Everybody, the church.
There you go. The church saying, hey, you're a coward. You should have stood up for what you believed. And to that, I would just say, man, I'm here all day and every day to stand up for what I believe, but I'm also going to stand in the gap to protect my kids. And I felt like the right thing to do was to pull the video to protect my daughters.
That's a good point. Like, now, did your wife, was she on the same page with you through the whole thing? Like, oh yeah, this isn't a big deal. I don't see why people are mad. And then when you're pulling it, like, supportive of, I think that's the right thing to do. Like, were you and her kind of aligned, or was she at some point like even like mad? Like, why would you do this song?
So we had a blast. We made the song together as a family, and doing the video was
great.
Like, we had a blast. So everybody, the whole West family was on board because, and here's why: Emily knows me, my daughters know me, they know who I am as a dad, they know the joke. They know what the joke was, the song was. They know the irony of it. They understood it, and they were all on board. What people made it feel like was like, oh, these kids are in a toxic environment. They're not safe. And it just,
right.
And so I will say that, like, there was a moment where my wife and I were on a walk, and she just started crying, like in the heat of it. And she's just like, well, this has to stop. Like, we can't let like our kids be in this situation. And she fully supported me the entire time. And yet we were both heartbroken for how hurting and lost our world is that they would react so negatively to it. And, at the same time, I mean, I respect Christians who had a negative experience growing up in church. I mean, it's true.
Sure.
I got messages from people saying, hey, I was abused by a pastor, or I was manipulated by a youth pastor, or whatever it might be. And I totally respect that and have sensitivity for it. But if you go and listen to this song, it had nothing to do with any of those scenarios. And so I think I'm thankful for my wife, because she stood by me the whole time, but she and I collectively made the decision to pull that song. I wasn't going to do anything without, first of all, praying about it and then talking to my best friend, which is Emily.
See, I had a time, because a lot of times people insert their own narrative into things, and like the whole thing about a youth pastor, taking advantage of them or whatever, has nothing to do with that song or your intention. Like, I remember one time we were doing a thing about the beach, and goofing around about fun at the beach or whatever. And this person who was hurt, and was so offended that I would talk about this. And then I'm like, well, wait, I'm talking about being at the beach. What's the problem? Well, I had a friend that died. How dare you talk about the beach? They drowned at the beach. I'm like, you're adding and I feel bad for you. And that stinks, but you're adding something in your personal experience to something that has nothing to do with that. That's a you problem.
If you, Wally, telling that story is triggering that for that person, you have to wonder what doesn't trigger it then. I mean, you go to Olive Garden, you get triggered because it's all you can eat soup. And one time somebody told me I could have all you can eat soup, and now I can't have. I mean, and I'm not trying to make light of somebody's trauma in their life, but the reality is we have to live our lives in a world where if everything is triggering something that you dealt with, and then you're projecting your narrative, then that narrative is dominating your life. And I would have to just say that that's not God's plan for you either, right? God wants to free you.
And you haven't truly dealt with it.
And I know it's easier said than done. I know there's things that happen to us in our lives that we simply have the hardest time moving on from. But what I'm talking about is not moving on from it. Are you able to at least see conversations for what they are and allow everything to have its place and not impose your narrative of your personal experience at every turn? Because if that's the case, then when you watch a movie, when you go to a restaurant, when you turn on the radio, everything's got to fit your narrative. And you know what? We just don't live in a world like that. That is totally unrealistic to expect. And a lot of people did. They projected their negative experience on the church, and they were looking, I could just tell as I look back now, they were looking to pounce on somebody who represented the experience, negative experience that they had. And because I wrote a funny song, I became sort of a sitting duck. Isn't this crazy though, that like of all the songs that I've talked with you in your show about, we've done so much ministry, we talk about Jesus, we're literally using 100% of our platform to try to be hope in a hopeless time, right? And yet we still get criticized. And it takes a goofy song about turtlenecks to, I actually wrote a different version of it in my mind. In one of my panicky moments, I wrote a new version, and it was called Offended. And I said, dear daughter, it's me, your father. It seems the world outside is woke. I wrote a little song about turtlenecks, and some people didn't get the joke. So I pulled the song down. And then I said, so I pulled the song down, and the Christians came around calling me a coward. And the statement that I made, well, the haters still hate, because everybody said that's not an apology, which it wasn't. And they tell me on social media every hour, because the whole world's offended. The latest social trend is to form an opinion and then dig your heels in. We talk about love and tolerance, but then we go on the attack. The whole world's offended. Everybody watch your back. And of course, I never released that version, but that's definitely how it felt.
Matthew's not holding on to any of this either. Like, I remember it verse line by line. Yeah, he's still got to work through this too.
I'm working through it
here.
I am working through it.
Dude,
and
I get it.
You know what's crazy is I stepped on stage in Michigan on Thursday night, 14,000 people in the crowd at Unity Fest, it's called. And we stood up on stage, and we were headlining this night on Thursday night. And I walk out, and the first thing I see in a sea of 14,000 people is a giant pink poster that says "Modest is hottest." The very first thing I saw.
That's how you know you've done good work. That's so great, man.